Greetings, YouTube. My wife recently left an image on the computer for me to see, and it was a dragon based off of a T-Rex. And that got me thinking, what if we were to break dragons into 3 separate species? So, we'd have land dragons, air dragons, and sea dragons. And the land dragons would be based off of the kind of build a T-Rex has, though their arms would be longer and more functional than a T-Rex's. The land dragons would have powerful cone-shaped style of breath weapons, the most powerful breath weapons among the dragons. They would be more heavily armored, and they would be more heavily muscled as far as combat goes. They would probably have their wingless, and they would probably have a powerful tail attack that they would often augment with weapons, so putting blades or spikes on their tails to make them more dangerous. Or even they could put blunt objects if they prefer to do bludgeoning damage. And they would literally rule the land. They would be the force that is incredibly dangerous. Now, since we're coming up with new concepts, there's no reason to say that you couldn't have the land dragons being the brute force type of creature. Maybe they're not as intelligent as the other types of dragons. Maybe they are. Maybe they are also spell wielding or psionically empowered. It's up to the GM. The next category would be the flying dragons, but these would also be quadrupedal, as they would have 2 lower limbs and 2 upper limbs, which are their wings and no other extremities. So, like the Smog that was in the Hobbit movie. Some people would actually consider these to be drakes as opposed to be proper dragons because they only have 4 limbs. And to many people, a dragon has to have 6. I'm on the fence on that one. But the flying dragons have less powerful breath weapons, but they're longer range, so they're kind of a line effect as opposed to an area of effect, like a cone. They would have, of course, a great deal of more mobility. They would have wing buffets and possibly also a less damaging tail attack. And they would rule the skies. And the last species would be the sea dragons. And the sea dragons would be kind of built on the hippocampus design, which is a lower body, which is very mirror-like, so it's just no limbs, it's one, no separate limbs, just a tail, powerful tail. And the 4 limbs would be webbed claws. And you could build them along the lines of seahorses if you want something unusual, or just go with the more traditional dragon 4 limbs and more kind of an aquatic theme to them. And they would be able to breathe water, powerful swimmers, of course, a very, very poor mobility on land, as would the the flying dragons would also have poor land mobility. And the sea dragons would probably only have 1 or 2 breath weapons, because the only 2 breath weapons I can think that are really effective underwater are lightning and frost, or cold. Now, lightning, because if you're in seawater, trying to defend yourself against electricity is going to be darn near impossible. So you might definitely have a negative to your saves against electrical attacks underwater. I believe that there are some rules that take that into account. But one of the great dangers of cold breath weapons is if you have an area of effect and you breathe it on someone and you can encapsulate that target in ice. First of all, they're very likely going to be unable to breathe if they're water breathing, but they are immediately going to start floating to the surface. And if you're using pressure rules, that could almost be an instant death sentence for creatures that are normally residents of the depths. Even normal, ordinary people like you and I, if we're down after a certain level, we can go through painful bends, which could be life-threatening if we are rapidly brought to the surface from the deep. Also, I would probably give the sea dragons immunity to pressure, just because why not? Let them be able to travel anywhere in the aquatic realms. And of course, this would play well into the Cerulean Seas setting from Illyria Press. So these are some ideas. I haven't used them at all. This is just something inspiration I got from an image my wife left for me on the computer one day. And it just did kind of make me think we could radically view the different types of dragons in fresh ways. Now, I've spoken about kobolds before, and there's no reason you couldn't roll the kobold ideas I had from the past in Dragons into this concept. Just that you end up with land kobolds, sea kobolds, and flying kobolds. Kind of like batlings. So you could combine a bunch of these different ideas. You can hermaphroditic dragons, which I've used in the past, could be used in with these ideas as well. So tell me, how would you use these 3 different dragon species in your campaign? Do you think they have any merit, or do you think that you would prefer to stick with the traditional dragons as they are portrayed in Pathfinder and D&D or in mythology, or do you like the idea of having a fresh look at dragons that you maybe didn't have before watching this video? So I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say.